You stepped aside in the hallway to let them pass, and they did not even acknowledge your existence. You shrank your shoulders, broke your stride, and offered a tight, accommodating smile to a phantom who walked right through the territory you just abandoned. You felt the immediate flush of humiliation hot in your chest, the quiet realization that your courtesy was processed entirely as irrelevance. You were taught to call this being a decent person, but it was actually an act of submission. Call it the principle of preemptive surrender. It is the mechanism where a mammal lowers its physical stature and yields ground to avoid immediate low-stakes conflict, unintentionally displaying permanent subordinance to the group. Everything that follows will reveal why this invisible engine runs beneath every interaction you have ever had. What you are about to see cannot be unseen. This knowledge is not a gift. It is a heavy, isolating burden that will strip the comforting illusion of politeness from your reality forever. If you prefer the warmth of being used, leave now. The power dynamic is an evolutionary force operating entirely between entities. It is a distant, unfeeling architecture that does not care about your intentions. The social matrix is not built on manners or reciprocal kindness. It is a strict hierarchy of spatial dominance. The person who requires the least accommodation dictates the reality of the room. At the level of a single interaction, the moment you enter, the software of everyone present runs a silent calculation of your density. They are measuring how much pressure it takes to move you. When you apologize for occupying space or rush to fill an awkward silence, you are handing them the math that proves you are a lightweight. The system demands a hierarchy, and you are volunteering for the bottom. You thought you were failing at socializing, or the people were simply ungrateful for your effort. You were not betrayed by your character. You were betrayed by your placement. You made yourself a yielding surface, and the system did exactly what it is designed to do. It stepped on you. The outcome was determined by where you stood, not who you are. Asymmetrical accommodation is the reflex to shrink one's presence to make others comfortable. The group registers this not as kindness, but as a lack of internal density. Think about the last time you preemptively agreed with a loud voice in a meeting just to smooth over the tension, feeling your throat tighten as you swallowed your actual thought. It is not your fault. It is not cowardice. It is evolutionary coding. For early hominids, blending into the background and avoiding the alpha's gaze was a survival imperative when resources were scarce. You are executing ancient software designed to keep you alive in a tribe that no longer exists. Here is the brutal truth. The layer underneath the layer is that your hyper-awareness of their comfort actually makes them inherently uncomfortable. By constantly adjusting to them, you become an unpredictable variable, a reactive organism that lacks its own structure. They cannot lean on you because you are constantly shifting to accommodate them. People do not trust what they can effortlessly move. They trust what stands still. Niccolò Machiavelli watched this exact error destroy a republic. Piero Soderini, the statesman of Florence, believed his inherent goodness and endless politeness would pacify his political rivals. He refused to strike, refused to offend, and continuously sought compromise, writing accommodating letters to men who viewed his decency as an invitation to devour him. His reward for playing the polite gentleman was exile and the collapse of everything he built. The Florentine court did not care about his manners. They only measured his resistance. When they found none, they took his territory. You are operating like a fortress, executing the strategy of the open gate. You leave the heavy iron doors wide open, stripping the guards from the walls, hoping that by showing no resistance, the approaching army will appreciate your hospitality. But a fortress with an open gate is never respected as a sanctuary. It is immediately mapped for invasion. Deference is not a social grace. It is a down payment on your own replacement. The world will never ask for your permission to take the space you have already volunteered to surrender. In the algorithm of perceived value, you will see why the more of yourself you give away, the cheaper you become in their eyes. Next statute, the algorithm of perceived value, call it the algorithm of perceived value. This is the place where your relentless availability becomes your own unmaking. The system regulates worth strictly through scarcity. It is an economic engine running constantly on biological hardware, calculating the social hierarchy of every room you enter. It does not operate on fairness, reciprocal kindness, or the purity of your intentions. It operates purely on supply and demand at the level of the human nervous system. When you look at the power dynamic from a distance, you see a ruthless sorting mechanism that automatically devalues whatever is most abundant. At the level of a single interaction, this calculation is instantaneous. Inside a conversation, every eager nod of agreement, every immediate text reply, and every preemptive laugh at a mediocre joke is logged by their subconscious, not as generosity, but as surplus. You are flooding the market with your presence, assuming that more effort equals more reward. The system dictates the opposite. Watch two individuals introduced to a new high-status group. Both are handed a subtle, dismissive comment, wrapped thinly as a Joker classic test of boundaries. The first person laughs too quickly, rushing to validate the insult, desperate to prove they can take a joke and belong to the pack. They lean in, their physical energy spilling forward, offering a frantic, accommodating grin to pacify the predator. The second person does not laugh. They do not get angry or defensive either. They simply hold the gaze of the person who made the joke for 3 seconds of unbroken, heavy silence. They let the comment hit the floor and die there in the quiet. The air in the room thickens instantly. The group's internal hierarchy silently, violently realigns around this vacuum. The first person is immediately categorized as eager prey, a disposable asset. The second person accumulates weight. They become a fixed object in the room that others must now navigate around. A reaction is a transfer of power. Stillness is the retention of it. The mechanism driving this is inflationary social currency. Just as a central bank printing endless paper money destroys the purchasing power of its dollar, a person printing endless availability destroys the value of their attention. When you constantly supply agreement and presence without requiring the other party to earn it, you make your social currency worthless. Think about the physical reality of how you operate. You respond in seconds to someone who takes hours to reply to you. You over-explain your boundaries instead of simply enforcing them. You do not consciously decide to value their scarce attention more than your own abundant effort. Your biology does it for you. Human beings are evolutionary misers, wired to conserve energy and only assign high importance to resources that are difficult to extract. When you are always polite and always smoothing things over, you trigger their instinctual boredom. You must explicitly remove the moral blame from your own shoulders right now. It is not a flaw in your character. You are simply indoctrinated to be a constant, frictionless source of warmth, entirely unaware that warmth without friction is processed by the mammalian brain as cheap. This brings us to a specific physical signal that governs this terrain, the Machiavellian smile. There is a smile of submission, freely given to diffuse tension, and there is a smile of leverage, deployed only when a concession has been extracted from the opponent. You are currently trapped using the former. We will address the precise architecture of the latter in due time. The layer underneath the layer is that by over-investing in their comfort, you are actively training them to expect a permanent discount on your dignity. They learn, purely through repeated exposure to your deference, that they do not have to work for your validation. You look at your exhaustion and your resentment, and you think you are simply loving the wrong people, or perhaps not trying hard enough to communicate. You are analyzing a structural collapse as if it were a personality flaw. You are mispositioned. You placed yourself in the role of the infinite, unconditional supplier, and the system correctly identified you as a resource to be depleted, not a sovereign entity to be respected. The outcome was locked in the moment you made yourself easy to consume. You are not being taken for granted. You are being accurately priced according to the supply of your attention. Imagine the physical reality of a massive rusted iron scale. Every time you lean forward in an interaction, every time you double text, over-explain yourself, or offer an unearned apology, you are tossing heavy iron coins onto their side of the scale. You think you are building a bridge of connection, but you are just unbalancing the physics of the relationship. As their side drops heavily and securely to the floor, you are left suspended high in the air, weightless, frantically kicking your feet. You cannot negotiate from the air. You have no gravity. The one who leans forward first is the one who falls when the other steps back. In the algorithm of perceived value, Your endless generosity is the exact metric they use to calculate your insignificance. Stop trying to buy their respect with the currency of your compliance. In the calibration of threat, you will realize why your kindness is currently being actively misread as weakness. Next statue, the calibration of threat. Call it the calibration of threat. This is the place where your good intentions are intercepted and translated into an invitation for exploitation. Strip the morality out of it and look at the math. The power dynamic is an entirely blind evolutionary force operating between entities. It does not read your mind to discover your virtues. It only measures the physical boundaries you enforce. Most men move through the world believing that social harmony is the default state of nature, disrupted only by bad actors. That is a fiction. The baseline state of human interaction is a continuous, silent test of spatial and psychological autonomy. They operate under the delusion that if they are harmless, they will be left alone. They believe that rendering themselves small will grant them immunity from the friction of the hierarchy. The architecture of human nature does precisely the opposite. It targets the harmless. It consumes the small. At the level of a single room, every interaction begins with an invisible probing engine. The moment you enter, the subconscious architecture of the group begins scanning for weaknesses in your perimeter. They will drop a slightly disrespectful comment, arrive 10 minutes late, or interrupt your sentence. This is not personal malice. It is strictly data collection. Respect is not granted. It is extracted through the demonstration of a boundary. This phenomenon is predator boundary testing. The human nervous system is wired to subconsciously probe for resistance to determine hierarchy. It seeks the path of least resistance to establish dominance, calculating exactly how far it can step into your territory before encountering a wall. It is a strictly mechanical process of finding the floor of your tolerance. They are not asking themselves if you are a good person. Their neurological hardware is asking, what happens if I push here? Does it yield or does it push back? This testing does not happen in grand dramatic confrontations. It happens in the micro moments. It is the associate who takes your preferred seat at the table. It is the acquaintance who hands you their empty glass while they check their phone. Ground this in your reality. A colleague makes a passive-aggressive joke at your expense, and you instinctively laugh to diffuse the tension. You are executing the principle of preemptive surrender we mapped earlier. You must remove the moral blame from yourself for this reflex. You are conditioned to believe that de-escalation is always the highest virtue, oblivious to the fact that you are dealing with mammalian hardware. To the nervous system of the person testing you, your nervous laugh is not processed as politeness. It is registered as an unopposed advance. You have indicated that your borders are entirely undefended. The layer underneath the layer is that by failing this test, you do not just lose the moment, you define the permanent physics of the relationship. Once they learn they can cross your line without friction, they will never honor a boundary you attempt to draw later. They will view your sudden resistance as an unearned rebellion, not a legitimate defense. You are trying to renegotiate a contract that was signed the moment you smiled at their first insult. The social matrix hardens quickly. Once you are slotted into the role of the accommodating subordinate, the energy required to break out of that caste is monumental. You cannot demand autonomy in a territory you have already taught them they own. Niccolò Machiavelli mapped this exact behavioral architecture when observing Cesare Borgia at Sinigandlia. Borgia faced a conspiracy of his own mercenary captains. He did not react with immediate emotional rage. He did not complain about their betrayal or demand they respect his authority. Instead, he deployed politeness not as a default posture, but as a lethal weapon. He invited the conspirators to a meeting, greeting them with warmth, extravagant courtesy, and perfect aristocratic manners. He lulled their threat detection systems to sleep. Once they were completely relaxed, entirely inside his perimeter, he had them all strangled. Borgia understood that politeness is a tactical camouflage, a tool used to manipulate the reflexes of the adversary. It is never a permanent identity. You are currently failing the test of the predator's gaze. In the wild, when a hunting animal scans a herd, it is not looking for the strongest or the most righteous creature. It sweeps its eyes across the landscape in a silent, unbroken scan to identify which animal flinches first. The one who breaks eye contact, the one who shifts its mass anxiously, becomes the target. By constantly offering unearned deference, you are the one twitching under the gaze, desperately broadcasting that you are the easiest kill. A polite man is a predictable man, and a predictable man is already defeated. In the calibration of threat, every apology you offer for existing is logged as a confession of your weakness. Stop proving you are harmless to people who are actively calculating how to use you. In the architecture of restraint, you will learn why doing absolutely nothing is often the most violent move on the board. Next statue, the architecture of restraint. Call it the architecture of restraint. Call it the architecture of restraint. This is the place where your absence of reaction becomes the heaviest, most suffocating object in the room. The power dynamic demands a constant, exhaustive exchange of signals. Most people view conversation as a cooperative building of bridges, a mutual exchange designed to establish comfort. The system views it as a continuous, ruthless negotiation of leverage. When you enter an interaction, the biological machinery of the collective expects you to broadcast your internal state. It expects you to leak data. It assumes you will trade pieces of your psychological armor for the temporary warmth of group acceptance. At the level of a single room, every interaction operates on a predictable rhythm of action and validation. They speak, they expect you to nod. They make a veiled insult, they expect you to flinch, apologize, or laugh nervously. When you withhold that expected validation, you break the rhythm, you create a void, and the human nervous system is utterly terrified of a void. The person who needs the least from a room controls the room. This is the mechanism of silence as pressure. It is the tactical withholding of emotional reinforcement designed to force the other party into a fatal overextension. The mammalian brain requires constant feedback to feel secure in its social positioning. When that feedback is denied, primal anxiety spikes. The adversary will instinctively rush to fill the silence, revealing their own insecurities, talking in circles, and offering concessions they were never even asked for, purely to stabilize the environment. Look at how this operates in a confrontation. They deliver a thinly veiled critique disguised as advice. Instead of arguing, you simply look at them. You do not scowl. You do not cross your arms or defend your honor. You just let the silence stretch. You let it become physically, excruciatingly uncomfortable. You must explicitly remove the moral blame from your past failures to execute this. You were genetically programmed to seek tribal harmony. You were taught that silence is rude, that you must constantly grease the wheels of social interaction to survive, and that being a good person means constantly validating the speaker. You are fighting millions of years of herd survival instinct that screams at you to submit. The layer underneath the layer is that by offering nothing, you force them to project their own deepest fears onto your blank canvas. They begin negotiating entirely against themselves. Your opacity becomes a flawless mirror for their own inadequacies. They assume you know something they do not, simply because you are not rushing to prove what you know. Restraint is not the absence of action. It is the deployment of implied threat. Picture a high-stakes environment where a figure of authority directs a sharp, humiliating critique at two different men seated side by side. The first man reacts instantly. His face flushes red, his hands rise defensively, and he begins to frantically explain his position. He lists excuses, his voice raising half an octave, his sentences bleeding into one another in a desperate bid to repair the social bridge. The authority figure leans back, visibly satisfied, having successfully extracted the submission. The predator has fed on his anxiety. Then, the authority figure turns the exact same critique on the second man. The second man does not defend himself. He does not nod. He simply rests his hands on the table, holds the authority figure's gaze, and lets 4 full seconds of dead, heavy air fill the room. He blinks slowly. When he finally speaks, it is a slow, methodical pivot to a completely different subject, utterly ignoring the frame of the critique. The first man dissolved into a puddle of reactive emotion, begging for return to baseline. The second man accumulated massive positional weight through pure, unyielding restraint. He did not fight for the territory, he simply refused to acknowledge the invasion. You have spent your life frantically trying to explain yourself, believing that if they just understood your perspective, they would respect it. This is the trap. You are diagnosing a positional failure as a communication error. You were never misunderstood. You were simply mispositioned. You placed yourself in the defensive posture of a defendant on trial, voluntarily handing them the gavel. The outcome was locked the moment you opened your mouth to justify your existence. The biological system does not respect the strength of your argument. It respects the absolute strength of your boundaries. You must become the shadow. A shadow does not fight the light. It simply absorbs it without reflecting a single photon back. It offers absolute opacity and total unpredictability. When they cast their testing energy toward you, expecting a reflection, expecting you to catch the ball and throw it back, you must be the void where their energy disappears. The moment they can predict your next move, you have already lost the position. Inside the architecture of restraint, your refusal to play the game is the only winning move. Your desperate need to be understood is the exact lever they use to control you. In the currency of friction, you will discover why the people they respect the most are the exact ones who make them the most uncomfortable. Next chapter, the currencies of friction. Call it the currency of friction. Call it the currency of friction. This is the place where your manufactured agreeableness is finally exposed as the exact reason you are easily forgotten. The power dynamic operates as an evolutionary marketplace, and in this marketplace, comfort is the cheapest commodity available. Most people walk into a room believing that the best way to build a connection is to be as smooth and frictionless as possible. They want to be easy to deal with. They want to be the path of least resistance. But the system from a distance does not respect the path of least resistance. It steps on it and continues walking. The biological hierarchy is forged exclusively in moments of resistance. At the level of a single interaction, when you agree with everything they say, when you seamlessly adapt your schedule to theirs, you become invisible. You slide right past their threat detection and value assessment hardware without leaving a mark. To be remembered, to be categorized as a high-value entity within the tribe, you must intentionally cause cognitive dissonance. You must force their brain to stop its automatic processing and actually work to navigate around you. People do not value what they can acquire without a fight. The mechanism governing this is cognitive dissonance as respect. The mammalian brain is inherently lazy. It only assigns high status to entities that challenge its reality and force it to expend energy. When you are instantly agreeable, you are low-calorie social nutrition. They consume you without thinking. But when you introduce fiction, when you disagree, when you hold your silence, when you make them weight you, force them to invest psychological calories into the interaction. Look at how you operate when someone makes an unreasonable request disguised as a minor favor. You instantly calculate how to fulfill it without causing a scene. You lubricate the gears of the interaction with your own blood. You must strip the moral blame from this reflex. You are not weak. You are simply executing ancient survival programming. For millennia, causing friction within the tribe meant risking isolation and death. You were biologically wired to prioritize group cohesion over your individual boundary. But in the modern, sanitized world, that instinct is a lethal vulnerability. Safety is the opposite of leverage. The layer underneath the layer is that by providing this calculated friction, you actually force their brain to justify the energy they are spending on you. The harder they have to work to earn a piece of your validation, the more they will subconsciously value the outcome. They will convince themselves you are worth the effort simply because they are making the effort. This brings us to the closure of the Machiavellian smile. Earlier, we mapped the devastating cost of the submissive smile, the one you give away for free to lower the temperature of the room. Here is where it flips. The Machiavellian smile is a tool of pure friction. It is the smile of leverage. It is never offered as a greeting, and it is never deployed to make them comfortable. It is used strictly as a reward. You hold your cold, flat boundary. You let the tension build until they finally yield, until they backtrack, apologize, or offer the concession. Only in that exact second you offer the smile. It signals that you are not angry, but that your warmth is expensive, and they have just paid the price to experience it. A boundary without fiction is just a suggestion. Watch this play out in the physical space. Two figures are seated across from a superior demanding an impossible unpaid extension on a project. Identical external conditions. The first figure leans forward, deploying the submissive smile. They explain how tired they are, but quickly assure the superior they will make it work. The superior nods, completely satisfied, and leaves. The superior got what they wanted, but their respect for the first figure dropped to zero. The second figure hears the exact same demand. They do not lean forward. They do not smile. They look at the superior and state, entirely devoid of emotion, "No, that timeline does not work." The air tightens. The superior pushes, raising their voice, applying pressure. The second figure holds absolute stillness. They let the superior expend all their energy against a brick wall. Finally, realizing the intimidation tactic has failed, the superior sighs and offers a realistic compromise. Only then does the second figure offer the Machiavellian smile. "That works," they say softly. The first figure survived by dissolving. The second figure accumulated massive weight by refusing to be moved. You must become the mirror. This is the final architecture you must internalize. A mirror does not generate light. It only returns exactly what is given. You match their energy precisely. You match their investment to the exact drop. If they give you cold detachment, you do not panic and give them frantic warmth. You give them cold detachment. You introduce friction by refusing to compensate for their deficits. You are not a person to them until you have successfully told them no. Inside the currency of friction, your refusal to make things easy for them is the foundation of your authority. Stop smoothing the path for people who are perfectly willing to watch you trip. In the sovereign vanguard, you will see the exact architecture of a man who no longer needs to ask for his space. Next statue, the sovereign vanguard, call it the sovereign vanguard. This is the place where you cease being a reactive organism and become an immovable object. The power dynamic at the highest levels does not run on the noisy, exhausting engine of aggressive dominance. It runs on the colder, more demanding physics of prestige. Most men equate power with the loudness of their bark or the width of their shoulders. They believe that status is something you actively take from others in a continuous, desperate brawl for the spotlight. The biological system dictates otherwise. True positional supremacy, the kind that makes the hierarchy silently warp around you, is not achieved by fighting for attention. It is achieved by demonstrating absolute competence and moving through the world without seeking a single drop of external validation. At the level of a single room, this is the architecture of unyielding gravity. When you operate with gravity, you do not alter your trajectory, your tone, or your pacing for the comfort of the collective. You produce, you observe, and you remain entirely unbothered by the shifting emotional tides of the people around you. You do not explain your methods. You do not ask if they are satisfied with your performance. You present your reality, and you let them adjust to it. The prestige pathway is brutal precisely because it offers no dopamine hits of immediate group approval. It requires you to sit in the quiet isolation of your own standards. The world does not respect the man who adapts. It respects the man to whom it must adapt. The mechanism here is the physical manifestation of unyielding gravity. The mammalian brain is constantly looking for fixed points of reference in a chaotic social environment. When you stop vibrating with anxiety, when you stop over-communicating and over-delivering to prove your worth, you become that fixed point. People will naturally anchor themselves to you, not because you are friendly, but because you are structurally stable. Ground this in your immediate reality. You walk into a negotiation, a social gathering, or a family dispute. The air is tense. Your instinct, ingrained by decades of conditioning, is to manage their emotions, to smooth the rough edges, to make sure everyone feels heard. You must strip the moral blame from this savior complex. You were raised in a culture that terrified you with the threat of being unlikable. You were taught that being agreeable was the rent you paid to exist in human society. But in the cold mechanics of the sovereign vanguard, your likability is irrelevant. It is a metric for peasants. The layer underneath the layer is that by refusing to manage their emotional state, you force them to manage their own. You stop being their emotional caretaker and start being their physical boundary. This is the closure of the principle of preemptive surrender. At the beginning of this mapping, we exposed the devastating instinct to lower your physical posture and yield territory just to avoid a low-stakes conflict. You surrendered because you falsely believed that holding your ground required an exhausting, aggressive fight. But when you possess unyielding gravity, holding your ground requires absolutely zero effort. You do not shrink, and you do not puff your chest. You simply occupy your exact dimensions. The predator hardware of the room scans you, registers the density of a man who does not need the room to like him, and silently recalculates. The surrender is no longer yours, it is theirs. You do not build respect by fighting for space. You build it by becoming too heavy to move. Niccolò Machiavelli reached this exact, chilling conclusion in his ultimate thesis on Fortuna, the unpredictable, chaotic goddess of circumstance. He observed that the vast majority of men try to politely accommodate fortune. They shift with the winds, they compromise their principles to survive the storm, and they are inevitably crushed by it. Machiavelli stated that Fortuna is a raging river that floods the plains, but the sovereign man does not ask the river for mercy. He builds dams and dikes in peacetime, so the water is forced to flow where he commands it. He imposes his will on the chaos rather than politely yielding to it. Machiavelli did not write a manual on how to be cruel. He wrote a manual on how to avoid being swept away by the cruelty of others. You thought your failure to command a room was a deficit of charisma. You were mispositioned. You placed yourself in the role of the diplomat in a territory that only responds to kings. You believed that if you were just competent enough and humble enough, the hierarchy would naturally reward you. It does not. The outcome was locked the moment you waited for their permission to claim your authority. Validation is a subsidy for the weak. Gravity requires no external funding. Inside the sovereign vanguard, your absolute indifference to their approval is the only crown that matters. Stop asking the system to make room for a man who refuses to take it. The architecture is now fully visible. The principle of preemptive surrender, the biological reflex that forced you to shrink, apologize, and yield your territory to phantoms, is being completely dismantled. You now see the social matrix for what it is, a blind, unfeeling engine of leverage and positioning. The surrender was never a moral virtue, it was a mechanical error. And now that you see the gears turning beneath the skin of every interaction, the mechanism has lost its power over you. It was inevitable that you would arrive here. The pain of being invisible was simply the catalyst required to force your eyes open. The version of you that required external permission to exist is dead. That identity is obsolete. Do not mourn the man who smiled when he was insulted. Do not attack him. He served his purpose by surviving long enough to bring you to this exact threshold, but his programming is no longer compatible with the terrain ahead. He is irrelevant. The man who traded his psychological autonomy for a seat at a table that did not respect him has been permanently uninstalled. You will never again step aside in a hallway for a phantom. You will never again laugh at a joke designed to demean you. You will never again offer the currency of your compliance to buy a counterfeit peace. Look at the masses around you. Do not judge them and do not try to save them. They are not your peers. They are background systems. They are automatic, reactive hardware, blindly executing the algorithms of comfort, validation, and fear. They move through the world begging for external coordinates because they have no internal compass. They will spend their entire lives trading their dignity for a temporary reduction in anxiety. You are no longer part of that collective. You have been unplugged from the machinery of the herd. Your mission now is absolute, unyielding self-mastery. You must build a purpose so dense, so entirely self-sustaining, that it requires absolutely nothing from the people in your proximity. When you no longer need them to see you, you will suddenly become the only thing they can look at. Self-mastery is the ultimate gravity. It pulls the world into your orbit without you ever having to reach out your hand. Vanguard. This space does not offer community. It does not offer comfort, and it does not offer salvation. Do not return here expecting to be held. Return here only when you are ready to rule.